Hi, this is Akiva from Twisted Tree Farm, and I'm talking about bitternut hickories today. This is one of my favorite trees, and I'm going to get to the why, but first I'll get to the what is a bitternut. So if we look at the bark, it's not like a shagbark hickory. Bitternuts are a really smooth bark. This tree is a big one. This is a fully mature bark. It's if you run your hand over it, it's much smoother than an ash tree. It does have that interlacing kind of pattern, but not as significant as an ash does, and just really smooth. They often have really smooth root flares too, and this tree, I think it's probably 200 or 300 years old, and bitternuts make, here, let me show you the nuts here. They're different than a shagbark or any other kind of hickory. So they have these ridges. Now a shagbark would have a split all the way through, four pieces. But here they just have the ridge, and then it's smooth, and the husks just kind of peel off. They don't really segment off; they just peel off. They segment a little, but anyways, you can see how they work. And then the nuts are weird. They're smooth, like little balls, and they have a tail on the end, and they're very thin shelled, and that's kind of why I'm gathering these. But we'll get to that in a minute. So you can see how thin shelled they are. You could just break them open with my teeth pretty easy, and look at how packed with nut meat they are. Just completely filled. It's not like a regular hickory. It's almost all nut meat. Look at the edge of the shell. It's paper thin. It's like an acorn. And this nut meat is 80% oil. So this is basically like drops of butter that we're gathering that are falling from this massive tree. And it's a really big tree. I don't know how well the video can show it, but it's impressive how large these can get. There's one on the other side of the street too, and they're just amazing. They like to grow in bottomlands, but they'll also grow on hillsides and stuff. And the reason we're gathering these is called a bitternut, but the bitterness, I always just thought it was like not an edible nut, and I also read that a lot of cars on this road, but it's worth it because it's a good spot. This tree's so good. The nuts are really thick. You can see on the side of the road there how thick the nuts are. That's why we came to this spot, because the ground is just covered in here. It's everywhere you step, you're stepping on nuts. So we're picking up pretty fast. It's taking us maybe about 15 minutes to fill a 5-gallon bucket, and I don't know how many buckets I'm going to fill, but it's going to be quite a few. So let me back up a little bit. So they're bitter, right? And so I always thought they were kind of worthless, just kind of a cool nut, or maybe like a joke to play on somebody. Because if you eat the bitternut, it's kind of like eating a red oak acorn. It's just full of tannins, and it'll make your mouth pucker up, and it doesn't feel edible at all. But then I was talking to Sam Thayer. He's an incredible author, if anybody hasn't read his books. And the bitterness is in the tannic acid, just like an acorn, which means it's water soluble. So it's not in the oils of the nut. So because the shell is so thin, we can drop these right into our oil press. And we have an oil press with our nut growers group, the New York Tree Crops Alliance. And so you can just drop these in whole. I crush them first, and then they fit into the press really well, and they go right through. And you don't have to separate the shells because the shells are so thin. So I couldn't do this with a normal hickory nut. I can't even do it with a hazelnut. There's too much shell in there for our commercial press. But these, they go right in like the way sunflower seeds would. And you get an incredibly high yield of oil. These, like I said, these are drops of butter. I'll fill a 5-gallon bucket of nuts today. I'll fill a bunch of them, but one 5-gallon bucket of nuts will equal about 3/4 of a gallon of oil. It's a really high yield. And if you think about where our oils come from, generally they're coming from extremely destructive practices, soybeans and rapeseed, canola oil, and these are just places where the entire ecology has to be destroyed, the soil's turned up, uprooted, and we've basically turned the earth into a moonscape to be able to plant these annual seeds. But this tree has been here for centuries, and it's holding the ground down. It's fine. It's totally fine to just come here, pick up nuts. Birds can live here, mice can live here, anything. It's it can be part of an ecosystem, whereas a traditional annual farm really can't be. And the yields are just incredible. This tree makes nuts every single year that I've been gathering from. Just a fantastic gift from here. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the oil that comes out, that bitterness is not present in the oil. What is present is the flavor of hickory. The oil tastes just like shagbark hickory. When you eat bitternut hickory oil, it really tastes just like shagbark. So hopefully we're going to make a bunch of oil this winter. And yeah, anyway, give thanks to the bitternut. Oh, last thing I'm going to say about it. People, if you read about it, they'll say it has no wildlife value. The nuts are too bitter for wildlife. This is not true. It's not true at all. They are every bit as valuable to wildlife as acorns. Deer will eat them, turkeys, blue jays, all kinds of rodents. Anything that eats acorns is going to eat bitternut hickory. It almost has a higher wildlife value than other hickories do. So, anyway, thanks for watching.